Thomas, you really don't need any introduction. I will.
Sure. I will give you a little bit.
So
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and also again, thanks for having me again. And yeah, so this year I thought I bring something a little bit different. So that's why I thought adding some sort of like a soft skill lecture. Hopefully this is enjoyable for everybody. I will try to make it as interactive as possible because we all know it's already late, so people are like, okay, you need dinner. Yeah, so let's get started. First of all, always, that's the great thing about coming here. I always speak on my own, not for SAP. So that's why this disclaimer, right? So the views expressed in this talk are not necessarily SAP's, but definitely mine, all right? So about this talk, why did I pick this topic? So it's based purely on personal experiences, what you have on the slides, a little bit on some research, but I'm definitely no psychologist or communication expert. So I will tell you why I have this personal experience. So I have, since 2 years, I'm responsible for leading 2 teams in Waldorf and 2 teams in Bangalore. And we are working on the ABAP development tools in general, but that's not necessarily important for this talk. So you can already see here, right, the word India. So this rings a bell when it comes to conference calls. Yeah, so just some math in the beginning. So I have 2 teams. We have 2 meetings each week. So usually one call with the team lead and then one with the team. And if you multiply that with 4 weeks, 4 months, and 12 months, you lead. I actually got that number when I made the slides. I was like, wow, this is not bad. But actually, there's lots of other calls because you have to know that even in Waldorf or Roth, the people who work at SAP, they're sometimes quite lazy and are not even willing to go from one building to the other one. So even then, you're having conference calls. So yeah, so that's the situation, and that's why I got pretty good at them. I hope I got pretty good. I definitely learned a lot, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I want to show you some basic stuff of what I've learned and what you then hopefully can apply to your daily conference calls. So how many of you have conference calls on a regular basis, like normal ones? Yeah, pretty much everybody. And the stuff I will show you is really basic, and hopefully this is really one of these talks where I'm like, am I even telling somebody something new? And but I think I showed some of the stuff to other colleagues, and they were like, "Oh, that's possible. That's cool." So yeah, feel free to give me feedback afterwards if there was anything new here. Okay, so to get started, what's like my personal conference call software? Like, what's like a typical conference call software? So we at SAP use Skype for Business. I'm not a fan. Okay, I have to use it, but it's yeah. Let's keep it that way. But in general, when you have a conference call software, you usually have 3 things. You can obviously dial people, speak with them with the microphone. You can share your screen. You have the webcam, very nice picture here. And you have the chat functionality, which actually not a lot of people use. And I will show you some stuff you can do with this. So that's like the normal stuff. And yeah, there are more fancy tools, but most of us, I think, are used to these kind of conference call systems. Okay, so before we move on, I think we have to realize like why conference calls are so different, okay, and why they are sometimes difficult. And that really is based on some basic facts on how we as humans communicate with each other. So first we have verbal, that's what I'm doing right now, verbal mode of communication. And then the second mode is what? Non-verbal, yeah, and how you could also call that, if I do this? Visual, but what kind of language is it then? Body language, exactly, yeah. So we have non-verbal, which is body language, and it's really a language, right? I can do this. And also, what's always fun is for the first time you interact with people from India, they look at you and they figure their head, and they were like, oh, why is he so confused? It's like, no, he's actually nodding, okay? So that really shows you that it is definitely a language. And if you miss that or don't understand the language, then you run into problems. Then because of that, because we very often don't see each other when we are on the phone, there is then this effect, right? This like, so I want, and then somebody interrupts, and then again you start at the same time, and then there's usually this, hey, Thomas, go first. Because you can't see really the lips, who starts first. So that's really a problem when you don't have a visual cue like I have right now on you, and I can't see whether you're talking or not. So for that, there was this great invention called webcams. We have one here. Most of us now have one built in our laptops. So who are using webcams on a regular basis for business calls, not private calls, business calls? Ah, not bad actually. I expected less. Cool. So yeah, I, especially with the team in India, but also even when I now call people, when I work from home and I speak with people in Germany, I usually switch it on. I think it's really great for building and showing trust. I will come to that trust part in a second, why this is actually showing trust. But I think this really gives you the opportunity, you know, to again use your full range of expression, your non-verbal and verbal communication skills. And I'm actually surprised in why not everybody is using them, since you know, if you're going into a normal meeting, everybody sees each other. But if you go in a business meeting with like a conference call, not everybody is doing this. And I don't think that everybody works at home in their bathrobe, you know, sitting in the kitchen working. Then maybe I don't want to switch on my webcam. But I find it actually interesting, and I definitely want to do some research on it. One thing which a friend of mine told me, she's a psychologist, is that she's assumed that maybe it's also because you always see yourself. You know, it's like you actually see a reflection of yourself in the mirror, and that's sometimes not very comforting for certain people. I don't know, but definitely an interesting question. Yeah, so then there's one thing, if you switch on the webcam, right, like here, and the other person or the other persons in the call are not doing it, like, I think the best way I can describe it is really like feeling naked, because they can see all your emotions, they can see everything. Right? So if you're angry, they will see it. Otherwise, you know, if you can't see me, then you don't know if I'm happy or not. If you can't see my face, or at least I'm not jumping. And that's actually one big thing I want to, one big lesson I learned last year, where I had one conference call with two other persons which I didn't know, and I was in this mode where I had tons of conference calls that day, 4 or 5, always with people where I always switch on the webcam. And then this other call came along with 2 people I hardly knew, and I also switched on my webcam, and they did not. And then you're like, okay, what's happening now? You know, because then switching it off maybe is a little bit weird, like, especially if it's running for 2 or 3 minutes. And then I kept it switched on, but it clearly showed, like, because of this was like a proper discussion, let's put it this way, and it's definitely a disadvantage then. So if you switch on the webcam, feel free, or my advice would be, ask the other person before, like, hey, should we switch on the webcam, right? Especially if you don't know them well. Definitely ask them first, like, hey, do we agree on that transaction that I switch it on and you switch it on? And otherwise, I would not do it, especially with people maybe you meet for the very first time. Because it can be very awkward, and it's definitely also a situation where you would basically then push, obviously, the other person if you switch it on first without asking for permission. So definitely be careful there. That was really a lesson where I cycled home, was like, damn it, why did I switch it on? Because it's a really weird feeling. Okay, but the webcams are actually not the biggest challenge. And so the biggest challenge, I think, which we face in when we have these conference calls is something different. And I really want to illustrate that this problem or the challenge you always face with a quick simulation, okay? So what I will do now is I will basically simulate a call I had. I will do this by actually turning around, and you will not see me anymore. And I will just speak in the mic. And then afterwards we will talk about what happened and also how you can improve this kind of situation. And what I will actually simulate is a call I had with where we talked about the solution manager integration into our in Eclipse, and that was the setup where we had 3 people in Germany. So we were in one room, 3 people from my team, and then a developer in Shanghai, and then another person in Roth. And there you can see, you know, was too lazy to drive over to Waldorf. So, and I will basically now give you a description on why it is challenging, because there was one problem, and I will describe this problem now to you, and you should try to follow me. And you should also try and find out, so you can see there's this counter here, right? And I will always increase that counter. And in the end, your task is A, to tell me whether you could follow me, and B, when I increase the counter and what the counter stands for, okay? All right, so like I said, this is really we had this call to solve, because they did not understand why it's hard to integrate the solution manager into Eclipse, and this is now what I will basically explain, okay? So first of all, obviously you need the Eclipse client, and the Eclipse client communicates with the backend with a RESTful API, and with RESTful APIs you have to know it's stateless. So when it's stateless, there is absolutely no session data, so that you do the call to the backend, and then the call is finished, and then the session state is over. And so the problem with the Soman integration is then that the Soman is basically a different system and runs checks on your objects. And it runs checks before an object gets added to a ABAP transport, okay? So when you save the object, and then the check is being run, and that check actually returns in some sort of a check ID, if it's and the check ID reference to whether the check is successful or not. And then how it works is that after the check is successful, you can assign it to a transport. But the funny thing is that the transport again checks whether the check ID is valid and whether the object was actually checked. And the problem here is that the solution manager check gets run in one request, and then there is another request in a different session for the transport request, and these actually don't share the same session, and then you get problems with the check IDs. Okay, so could you follow me? Some? So obviously this is a really pure simulation because I actually wrote down what I will tell, right? So when you do it freestyle, it's much different. Why do you think I had this counter? What was this counter doing? When did I increase it? Yeah, basically, yeah. So I would say it's all the same. Yeah. So basically, whenever I give new context information, a new kind of information, you have to process, and also you have to keep in your brain in order to understand everything, right? So because we humans have limits, and you know the limit. You know this really famous paper. Yeah, exactly. What's the number? 7. That's right. So there's this really amazing paper, really cool, by George A. Miller from Harvard University. It's very old, and it's called The Magical Number 7 plus or minus 2, some limits on our capacity for processing information. So a normal human being can have in the working memory, okay, just the working memory, when I'm talking to you, you have, you try to keep track of my speech in your working memory. And you can basically store 7 items, and then if you're really smart, +2. If you're not that smart, -2. Okay. So I'm sure we are all 9. That's why I stopped at 8. Oh yeah, maybe, yeah. And that number is really important, because it means that if you explain something to somebody and have a concept, and you give more information, then at one point, what are you then usually doing if you encounter that situation and you're on the phone? Yeah, what else? What do you might start doing then?
I will always ask, could we pause it on something?
Okay, yeah, we will get into this. But what I want to point out is that if I get the feeling like, sometimes if you have calls where there are 30 people and you don't want to be the person who's saying like, hey, can you please repeat this 3 times? So then I think also a good strategy is to just draw and make your own notes. So basically what I had here, you're just drawing then on your own, right? But that's not how it should be done, right? Yeah, but really keep this in mind, also for building UIs and explaining concepts to other people. This doesn't only apply to conference calls, this applies to whenever you basically give people information. And actually, I found out about this paper because of my sister. She wrote a PhD thesis on dyslexic children. So these are children who have to have a hard time learning to read, and actually they also have to process information, when reading. And she had then discussed a technique or introduced a technique which we usually then do when there are too many items, and that is called chunking. So chunking means that you maybe have 7 pieces of information and you process it in one. An acronym is good. It's a good example. For example, YOLO, you only live once, right? You don't remember the words, you just remember the acronym, and it's just one thing in your brain. And then you can you have six items left, okay? And that kind of chunking is basically also now what I'm doing here in this talk, because I also chunk it in different parts, okay? So you know where you are. Okay, so when you are in this situation, Gregor already went in the direction like, yeah, I ask him to draw it or to show it me somehow. So the question is now, what are the tools for overcoming this limit when you hit the limit, or when you feel like, hey, are you still with me? Can you still follow me? And my tool set is really not that complicated, and I will also ask you after this if you have more ideas. But the ones I show you now are really the ones I use basically every single day, and for me they are working actually now really well. So first of all, what's really important, and that's your best friend, is always sharing your screen, obviously, right? Like show, don't tell, okay? But that's not really a tool I want to talk about, but this is basically the basis about everything, because you want to visually somehow give information. Then in the call I talked about, right, so basically what I talked about on the paper, I tried this, so our call went, I explained it like this, nobody understood, okay? Especially because the colleagues were really not knowing our architecture. So I started doing this in PowerPoint, and then did it. But this is the only time I used ever PowerPoint. I'm not a big fan of using PowerPoint for conference calls, because it takes a lot of time to draw. It's not fast enough. You actually waste some time. But maybe you're getting really fast, and it's your tool. So this is also really my personal recommendation. But for that, I picked that one, and that was really cool. People got it, and I also then sent it out later as a meeting note, basically. So this worked really well. Then what I do sometimes is I use the chat to put in the items. So there you can also basically, so first, you have an Eclipse client, so I just put in first Eclipse client, boom, and then it's here. Okay, and then you can basically build up your list in the chat client. Has anybody ever done this? No. So this is really the fastest way, because you always have the chat ready. Just use it. Drawback of this one is obviously you can't then edit. Okay, it's in the chat, and then you can't edit the item anymore. So because of that, my favorite tool is really text edit. Whenever I see something is coming up, then you can see I launch it in 2 seconds. Then I always make it full screen, so nothing distracts my audience. And then the really cool thing here, I'm sure Notepad can do that as well. Then topic A, I can actually use the touchpad to really easily zoom and come up to a level where, it's really then easy to type stuff. And then, so that's really my preferred tool. I use that all the time, because I can edit and I can really easily, write down on what we are talking about, almost like doing a on-the-fly protocol. And I also can then send that to the persons who are in the call. And also I can ask them, hey, so about step 2, did you really get this? Or you have one more question? So that's really cool. I didn't expect that, but this is really probably for me the most useful tool. Then this is what I sometimes do when we are talking about UI mockups or UI designs or anything very visual. This is really something where I thought everybody knows this, but like one of our more like technical guys were like, oh, the webcam is good enough. So I can tell, yes, the webcams are good enough. So this is one of our like a room where we can take calls. Like we have like these small meeting rooms where for these when you have phone calls. So what I do is I would put my laptop here. Obviously it has a webcam, and then I calibrate with these points where my webcam is, picking up the stuff from the whiteboard. You can also do that with a flip chart, no problem at all. Note in the whiteboard, and then I draw these lines. And then what's really cool is if you have wireless headphones, because otherwise you're like, yeah, cool, I will draw this, and then you're like, with the wire, or you actually then move the laptop and like, oh no, now I have to calibrate it again. But yeah, take a Jabra headset with Bluetooth. Also, quick pointer, Skype Business and AirPods, bad idea. Because they're not really working with the Bluetooth connection. I don't know why, but it's really, so I did that, everybody liked it, I didn't have the cord, but then they were like, sorry, Thomas, we can't really hear you. Can you really use the... Actually, I bought them for this purpose. Can you use the wire one again? One more thing. I personally really prefer these ones. So Oliver Kohl from SCN, I sometimes speak with him, and he has these big headphones, and I'm always thinking, like, is he listening to music, or, you know? So I think these little in-ears, you know, it also makes you feel like a James Bond, you know, hero with your earpiece in. So I really prefer them. Does anybody do this? No? So really, try it out. It's pretty cool. And then again, afterwards, we have this beautiful smartphones. You just take a picture of the whiteboard, send it to the person, and you're done. So it's really... Oh, and then another thing which is really cool here. So if you have an audience in India or somewhere else where there's considerable network lag, this actually we found out by accident. They shared their screen back. So I could basically see... They shared their screen where they could see my webcam, so I could see what was on their screen. So it was basically my webcam signal went to their, over the world to India, and then they showed me again what they could see. And that really assured that I was not too far ahead. I could actually see where they are. So it's actually a really cool technique. It makes everything a little bit slower. No, I would then basically... I have my normal setup, and they just share their screen. Yeah. Share the webcam picture. Yeah. And this way, no, it's this one. Then you would see basically here your webcam image. They would basically reflect it back to you. And this is really cool. That way, I could easily see whether, because you always have network lag. Yeah, then those are also your special friends. You already talked about them, right? Can you follow me, especially if you can't see people? So if you're in this situation, please always ask people like, hey, can you follow me? You know, because you don't have that physical connection. Like I can look at you and I see, okay, some people might need some dinner now, and some people are really engaged. And this is really helpful, right? But if I don't have a webcam, I don't see them. I'm speaking in the dark. Okay, and also this can you repeat, also very helpful for normal meetings, but just ask people, especially if you explain something which is important for their work, hey, could you please repeat what I just told you in your own words, so you really get whether they got the point, especially if maybe that information is then really important for that next task, so they don't get it wrong. So these are really obvious things, but again, I see it all the time that people don't do this. So I put it in there. More ideas. Whiteboard for Skype for Business. But that's a separate thing I have to connect, right? Okay. Okay. I never used that one. For that was...
So it's whiteboard?
So maybe you can just...
It's the whiteboard, it's a part of Skype for Business.
So I guess it's here, right? Somewhere here.
If you go to share screen,
like here.
then you have not only share screen or share desktop, you have additional options. And there you have the whiteboard. And the whiteboard is like what you did with a notepad. Yeah. But additionally, every participant can type or draw. So it's a really nice thing. You have different kinds of pens to choose, and it's really very good.
I'm glad I came here. That will my luck of you. Perfect, thank you. Any more ideas? Did everybody use this? Right. So for drawing, it's nicer when you do it on the board, right? Anything else?
Yes, there is this surface board, it's called. So surface board, but make sure that when it's barely used, to start it at least half an hour before your meeting, because perhaps it takes Windows updates.
But Surface Board is an extra tool I have to buy, right, for the company? Yeah. I really like those, but that's also we have to book them, and that's just a hassle.
$5,000.
Yeah. Any more ideas? Cool. Okay, then let's wrap this up. So those are just some things, and to be honest, with these kind of things, tools, I think you can actually get quite far without even buying the really expensive solutions. Again, like with every meeting, it depends on good preparation, really knowing what the goal is for your meeting, etc. Right? So that's not what I want to talk about. So quick wrap up. So what did we talk about? So first of all, always be aware of the lack of body language and be aware of what this means for the conversation. Okay, so you lose something and you somehow have to replace it, and you have to be aware of this. And remember magic number 7 in chunking. Okay, even for building UIs, putting too much stuff on UIs, like the magic number 7 will appears basically everywhere in our world. Whenever you have to design some kind of information. And then normal tools are really powerful. Skype even has some stuff which I didn't know, so it's great. So use them, especially also, like I said, the webcam with using it with a whiteboard. I think it's really cool, but I also don't use it all the time. And as I already always mentioned, this obviously applies to normal meetings too. So feel free to pick one or two of these things and then try it out in your next meeting. And hopefully it will improve it. Any questions? Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. That was really great.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Maybe one question regarding the webcam. Do you have any experience how efficiently used the webcam is varying on the number of participants in the conference call? I would assume if you're working with like a handful of people, it does make sense. If you're working with a dozen people, in my opinion, it probably doesn't, or at least does less.
Mm-hmm. Good question. So, for me, really, the webcam is, in most cases, now really a show of this, actually it tells me a little bit about the person. So when I dial into my team meetings with the team in India, then not everybody actually will switch their webcam on. Some will switch it off, which is totally fine. I will always switch it on, because I fully trust them and they trust me. So for that already, it's like I use it more for that. And then it's, for me, just more like a feeling, actually, especially if you use it for people you talk about, you have a long-term relationship. I think then just having it on, for me, it's more about this feeling of like seeing all the faces in the application and getting this group feeling. But it's not about then so much about the body language, because I agree with you that maybe that's the point you want to make, especially if you have like 12 webcams, then actually you usually only see one, right? And it's always like switching, and it's a little bit weird. Like we had once this Skype, these 360 cameras. Have you seen those? And it basically makes like a 360-degree picture, and then basically unfolds it, and you can see it on the whole screen. And then you still have basically one camera which shows all the people, and gives you at least like some impression of the room, some feeling for the room. And that actually I really like, but yeah, otherwise I just don't have the experience.
Because looking at 12 individual images,
Yeah.
different focuses, different backgrounds, so on. It's not the same as looking at a group of 12.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, but these kind of calls I hardly have. Like, if there will be 12 people, like probably nobody would switch their webcam on. That's unfortunately the reality. Any more questions? Tobias.
So you have like 200 meetings a year or even more. It explains a lot regarding SAP software quality. That's actually good. Try to actually minimize the effort of explaining stuff in the meetings, like doing like the architecture stuff before setting up into the sequence, and only talk then about the results, like meeting preparation before doing the meeting. I mean, you can share the documents, you can share.
No, these meetings. So the meetings I have, so it's just the one-on-one with the team lead. This is totally built on. This is a one-on-one, so it's on building relationships. I go in the meeting and it's half an hour only, and the team lead can talk about whatever they want. It's really about this human connection. I can't follow you.
No, is it, I mean, have meetings where you have to explain stuff.
Yeah.
Explaining stuff in the meetings, normally you do send out preparation material.
Yeah, but you have working meetings. You have meetings where you want to work on a design, for example, with the team, and you don't want to do the typical, here are the sketches, do it, and then what comes back? You want to do it with them together. So, for example, if you do UI designs, we do it on the whiteboard together in real time. But how you doing UI designs with the team when you are in the same room? Are you also preparing it? Yeah, that's also something we do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think it all depends on what you want to accomplish with the meeting. Totally agree. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's also how I do it. Yeah. 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 Oh, one last, and then I think then we have to stop.
One statement, because I had a lot of sending some preparation documents at SAP. We not send the documents anymore. We have now SharePoint, and we all work on the one single document. So this is what we need to convince everyone, because this is also a productivity increase. When you have something in the SharePoint, in cloud, everyone can access, get it, edit, and so on. So
Yeah.
don't send any copies of the
Yeah. We do most of the stuff in the wiki anyway, so then there's no even document. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much.